1999, the year of The Matrix and Unreal Tournament. As everyone was fragging each other or going bananas with Y2K panic, something was rumbling in the depths of the internet that would change the nature of PC gaming. Ultra HLE version 1.0 was released. This novel program utilized high-level emulation to play games like Super Mario 64 at full speed and at high resolutions like 800 by 600 using 3dFX's Glide API. If you were there back then, let me tell you, this was basically magic. Ultra HLE would mark the beginning of the era of high-level emulation on PC, where you could run console games on mid-spec PCs with enhanced quality and performance, and potentially even while the console that played that game was still on store shelves. In 2024, we're seeing a similar momentous occasion here where the Nintendo 64 is once again at the heart of a breakthrough which is going to change PC gaming. Zelda 64 Recompiled version 1.0 has been released. With this project, a whole new frontier has opened up for playing classic games on PC, and specifically ones from the Nintendo 64. And that is what this video is going to be all about today. What makes this project so special, how it runs and works, and how this project compares to the original release. So grab a chair, crack open a Deku Nut, and let's take a look at Zelda 64 Recompiled. Zelda 64 Recompiled, or more specifically N64 Recomp from Mr. Wise Guy, represents a new era of playing Nintendo 64 games on PC, as it is technically a new way of making that possible. If there was a continuum of how to play such games on PC, you would have emulation perhaps on the left, and dedicated and intense decompilation projects on the right. You could conceptually place recompilation here in the middle. Here it is not emulating the behavior of the hardware on the left, nor is it going as far as decompilation in attempting to recreate the original source code. Recompilation takes N64 binaries and recompiles them into C code, which is eminently portable, and then that can be compiled for any platform, including PC, where I am demoing this project at the moment. With it being compiled to a platform like PC, then new features and enhancements can be added as well, and a new rendering engine can drive it all. In this case, Zelda 64 Recompiled utilizes RT64, which is made by Dario Samo, whose work on Super Mario 64's ray tracing I have demoed on the channel before. The benefits of the Recompilation plus RT64 for this game are immense. No longer is the game limited to that original 320 by 240 resolution at 20 FPS as it was on the Nintendo 64. Now it can run at any resolution you see fit, at really any aspect ratio, including 16 by 9 or ultra wide aspect ratios. That 20 FPS limit, it's gone. And due to the work of RT64, the game interpolates frame rates arbitrarily upward. All of the footage is at 60 FPS here on YouTube, of course, but you can play it at anything like 120 FPS as we're seeing here slowed down. Whatever your display supports, this game can probably be pushed to it. And as far as I can tell in all the hours of play I've done so far, the interpolation does not have any negative gameplay consequences, and everything tends to look very natural. On top of presentation enhancements, there's also support for button rebinding and HUD positioning options to support the different aspect ratios, and there's also options for targeting mode and autosaving. User experience here is pretty straightforward and snappy. Setting up the recompilation is as easy as clicking the exe, providing the ROM data via the menu link, and then just playing. It's simple and no nonsense. The combined presentation changes with the UI design turns Majora's Mask from that N64 version into a dedicated PC port a quarter of a century later after the game's original release. And it's important to stress here that it runs and plays like a native PC port because it is a native PC port. This is why I'm comparing this release in 2024 to the release of Ultra HLE in 1999. That old school emulator ushered in the era of high level emulation and a new way to play these type of games on PC, and that is exactly what N64 Recomp will do too. With the N64 Recomp tool, dedicated individuals or teams will be able to simply port over classic N64 games to PC without the same hardcore requirements of a full decompilation or without the fiddliness and limitations of emulation. And that which is ported over when customized and tooled will function like a native PC port. And these ports can and will go above and beyond the ordinary. Thanks to RT64 by Dario Samo, things like new graphical effects, textures, models, and even full-on ray tracing are in the cards for future ports. Yes, full ray tracing for N64 games. Imagine that. Now all we have to do is be patient and supportive to developers who are interested in starting such recompilation projects. We will be waiting though for a bit, I imagine, and in the meantime let's talk a bit more about this specific Zelda 64 recompilation and in particular its visual accuracy. Does the recompilation keep the original experience intact? How does Majora's Mask on PC hold up next to the original article? Well, you can already tell that the game's going to be running at higher frame rates and resolution if you choose to. And to me, this port reminds me of the difference between a VHS tape and a 4K Blu-ray. Same content, just mastered with a higher potential if you want. Still, visual accuracy is a big part of the recompilation. Special attention is given in RT64 to replicate the N64's visual peculiarities, like how texture filtering is done with 3 samples instead of the typical 4, giving in-game text and object textures their intended look. Similarly, full-screen effects like distortions or accumulation blurs work just like they should, and look extra fantastic at higher frame rates. For the purists out there, if you do not like the HD look, you can in fact run the game at its original 320x240 resolution in widescreen or 4x3 with or without MSAA and with or without super sampling. And if you really want, you can also go for that original 20 FPS, but I really wouldn't. When put next to the N64 at these new settings, where the N64 was captured on a RetroTink 4K with the 4.5 times scaling option, we can see just how darn accurate this recompiled version looks, albeit at a higher frame rate as I'm showing here. So it looks the part, and at low res and due to downsampling and MSAA, it will have more stable lines, perfect anti-aliasing, and textures that will not degrade at a distance due to poor 90s filtering. I'm very happy that the port includes the ability to play the game at lower resolutions in a good way, as it makes sure there is not a great mismatch between resolutions. See, for games from this era, which tend to have low resolution textures and wonky 3D modeling, they can subjectively look better at lower resolutions. The argument is that the art was never originally designed to be viewed in high resolution, so its flaws will stand out more than they should. And if you run it at a lower resolution, the faults are less obvious and your brain will fill in the gaps a bit better. So I would say that is definitely a great way to play the game with the recompiled version if you want that low fidelity N64 experience, albeit perfected. Now me, I personally find the 240p look a bit chunky at times, so I instead have been preferring to play the game at 2 times the original resolution, aka 640x480 with very heavy anti-aliasing options enabled, and of course on a CRT at 60 FPS or 120 FPS. And yes, it looks amazing on a CRT at this resolution and with all this great anti-aliasing. It's giving me an alternative reality vibe almost, where it's like I'm playing a PC port of the game that came out in 2002 that just was collectively forgot about. For those of you that do not have a CRT though, you can of course try and inject things like CRT shaders with programs such as Reshade. So the visuals definitely check out. How about the audio? Let us compare to the original Nintendo 64 version here as recorded by my colleague John Linneman. As you can hear there, I think the audio is pitch perfect. Even the floundering off-color notes of the themed are preserved in all their weirdness. With Zelda 64 Recompiled, the visuals and audio are top-notch recreations of the original, so it will look and sound great. But how is performance? Being a game from the year 2000 running in compiled code on modern platforms, Zelda 64 Recompiled will run generally very, very well and is going to be very, very light on PC components. As I showed earlier, it will run at very high frame rates if you wish, and generally will not skip a beat. Using the RT64 renderer from Dario Samo means that Uber shaders are in use here, and there should not be any shader compilation stutter of any sort, even though the game is using a low-level API like DX12. I would say this is indeed the case, and my gameplay on a high-end machine was perfectly smooth, barring one anomalous moment in which the game kind of seized up, and the frame time spiked and the audio glitched. That looked like this. It only happened one time in 5 hours of play on this machine, and I have no good idea what caused it, but perhaps something like this could rarely happen on your end too if you were to try this out, so no, you're not alone if it does happen. As I was saying though, this port will scale really well to lower hardware given the graphical vintage. The game did run great on a Steam Deck, and my OG Steam Deck managed to hit 60 FPS at 1280 by 800 almost the entire time, with only a few VSync dropped frames here or there, perhaps due to compatibility issues. The recompilation does have a Linux executable, but perhaps some of the aspects of the way the game is rendered do not perfectly jive with the Steam Deck at the moment in version 1.0. That minor quibble aside, Zelda 64 Recompiled is an amazing fan effort to bring this culturally significant game to modern platforms. It is quick, easy to use, accurate, fast, and it is rich with useful features for the power user. It is going to be the herald of many new ports of classic N64 games to the PC, and I'm super excited to see what comes next from the fans. This specific recomp project here is going to be adding Ocarina of Time in the future, and potentially ray tracing, which I definitely will cover when it comes out. But what do you think? What recompiled ports would you like to see using this technology? Write a comment below and tell me. Also, if you can, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. If you're already a subscriber, hit that little bell in the corner to be informed as soon as Digital Foundry posts a video. Help us out on Patreon, follow on Twitter, and as always, this is Alex bidding you farewell und auf Wiedersehen.